I'm gonna get started, I think. Because, I wanna bring some clarification to some of the stuff we talked about last week, maybe. And I do want to get into why this is important, and because there's a lot of daily living application in this, but I also, some of the times, and I'll tell you a few things about myself. I get something in my, this is something I spent a lot of time studying and dealing with different arguments, and sometimes I'll respond to an argument because of what I know what the argument is. And the person responding, that I'm responding to, may not be making the argument that I'm hearing up here. And I have to be very careful about that sometimes, and sometimes I'm a little bit shorter than I should be. And sometimes I will not finish an argument because I already know what it is in my head. And I remember I had a person, there was somebody I worked with at Flight Express. She was a manager of the dispatch office. Her name was Mary Costa. And Mary had the worst habit of coming up with an idea and think that she shared it.
I do that.
And it's like, you know, she'll go on like this thing has been implemented, everything, and we don't even know where she's thinking. And sometimes in an argument, or an argument's not really the right word, but in a theological thing, I may not make the whole thing clear, because it's all clear up here, but it doesn't always necessarily come out. So what I want to do is go back and clarify or expand some things that we talked about last week, but I really want to get to why this is important. And this is going back to this whole thing of the image of God, and that we are created what? In His image. And there's things that we want to steer away from, but there's also a lot of things, and there's aspects of this where we don't think of it this way, and we come up with emotional arguments for biblical positions when there's a biblical argument for a biblical position. And because we sometimes will come up with an emotional argument about things, we end up applying it in one place and not applying it somewhere else, because it doesn't allow us to be consistent. Whereas if we would take the biblical argument for something, it allows us to be consistent across the board. And I've often said, as Baptists, we are the most comfortable with our theological inconsistencies. We'll believe something, but then there's an implication or a thing that thing that we believe and hold on to, it's like, well, this must be true, but we don't believe that, although it's necessary because of this. Or we'll believe something that, you know, a thing, but we don't want to believe the reason why we're able to believe that. And I pound on Baptists because I are one. And I think we're all guilty of every denomination's guilty of that on some point. Anybody know who Charles Ryrie is? I've talked about, he has a theology book called Basic Theology, which, if you want a really good, just concise, straightforward theology that's trustworthy across most of it, that's a good one. He went on and was going to write a systematic theology. systematic theology is different than theology in that you try to systematize everything and see how everything connects and try to be consistent across the board. You know what? He never finished it. He concluded that it was a futile effort, and he put it up, and I think that's the reason he ended up getting divorced too. Is his wife got fed up with him and stuff. But anyway, so there's always a tension, but there's some things I want to expand on, some ideas, because I think we left some things kind of, at least I was a little bit dissatisfied, but I want to get to the ramifications of it. So I'm going to pray, and then we're going to dig into this. So, dear Father God, I just thank you and praise you for the time we got together this morning. Thank you for the time we've already had in worship. And Lord, now we just pray that you would have your way with this conversation. Give us a freedom of thought and expression. Help us to just try to encourage each other and learn from each other, that we may know you better and serve you and glorify you better. I just pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Okay, so last week we were in the last half of the 6th day, where you have all the animals created, but then you have the pinnacle of creation, which is man. And he creates man, and I said you have this progression through the 6 days of building up. What's done on one day is kind of preparatory for the next day and going along, and in the end, we get to the end, and he takes man, he creates man in his own image to show forth God's glory in all of his creation, and places him in his creation, which was created for a place for God's image bearer to live, ultimately fulfilling the whole thing. And then he looks at it and says, it's all what? Very good. Okay? But in verse 27, after God says, let us make man in our own image, and after our likeness, then in verse 27 we see what he does. He says, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. So God said, let's do this thing, and then what? God does this thing. Okay? Now, God, we did this quite a while back, but if you remember that when we see God, G-O-D, capital G-O-D, that is referring to the Hebrew word Elohim. Okay? What does Elohim mean? God. But which one?
Small g. God.
The
supreme God.
It means God. It's a generic word for God. Okay? And this is a really cool thing, because through the whole first chapter, God is referred to Elohim. Okay? Baal would be a what? God. It would be a God, an Elohim. God is Elohim, but anything else that you refer to as God is Elohim. So remember, who wrote the book of Genesis? Moses. We think probably while they're wandering around the wilderness for 40 years. But where did Israel come from? Where were they before they were wandering around? In Egypt. Did Egypt have Elohims? Yeah. And a whole bunch of them. And that's kind of the point of the plagues, is all those plagues correspond to the gods that Egypt had, and God's showing that, hey, I'm bigger than your God. Okay? But, so they're wandering around, and I just got this picture in my mind while they're camped out that Moses says, hey, I got to go to my tent for a while. So he goes to his tent for a while, and he's writing. And he writes Genesis chapter 1, and then he comes out to the campfire, and some of his fellow Jews are sitting there around the campfire and say, hey, look what God gave me. And he reads Genesis chapter 1 to them. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Elohim. Okay, well, they're like, oh, that's cool. God created everything, okay? And then he comes back out, and then the next night, he goes back in the tent, and he writes Genesis chapter 2. And in Genesis chapter 2, we go from Elohim to Adonai. And who is Adonai? The Jewish God. So Genesis chapter 1, when he gets out there and he reads Elohim, they're like, well, that's cool. God created which one? And then he comes back out the next night with Genesis chapter 2, and he says, oh, this is the one, Adonai. And there's a relational thing in this. So when we're getting here, it's God created, but from just a literary standpoint, it's kind of a generic statement, God, and we have this progression of information that's being poured out, and we get to chapter 2, where we then figure out who this Elohim is the Adonai, the Genesis, the Jewish God that created everything. But so God says, let us create man in our own image, and then we see him doing this. Now, there's a couple things that we kind of kicked around last week, and I'm going to do this in a little bit different order than what I have it written down. Number one, I am created in the image of God, but am I God? Big G or little g? Either one. The answer's no. Anybody familiar with the Word of Faith movement in Christianity?
Yes.
What is it?
Is it a name it, claim it?
It's a name it and claim it. What you say, you can change reality by what you say. Okay? The two very most prominent people that hold this are Kenneth Copeland. Another one is Ken White. He's the one that stretches the legs. He used to have dreadnoughts, the big dreadnoughts and stuff. He's cut them all off now. But he would go out in the street and find people that supposedly have one leg shorter than the other one and play with the legs. But you can, if you watch, anyway, that's a whole nother thing. But both of them hold to this name it and claim it, or word of faith movement. And it comes out of this idea that we're created in the image of God. And you can search this on Google, just do a Google search on it. It's very easy to find. You can find both of them saying the same thing. We have the same DNA that God has pumping through our veins. We are basically God. And how did God create? He did what? He spoke. And because we have the same blood of God flowing through our veins and stuff, we can speak things into existence just like God speaks things into existence. And that's where the whole word of faith thing, there's a theological term for that.
Heresy.
Heresy or baloney, okay? It just ain't so, okay? And there's a verse, or in fact, Kim read it last night before she went to bed. Psalm 82. And I did not finish the discussion on this, but Psalm 82 is where you get this statement from God speaking to the people, to the Jews in Israel, and he says, you are gods. But if you read the context of Psalm 82, he's not just talking to the nation of Israel, but he's talking to the priests and the prophets, the leaders of Israel. Okay? And he says that you are gods. Okay? But he's not saying it in a praiseworthy fashion. He's saying it in a condemnation fashion. And he's like, you're going to die just like everybody else is. Let truth and justice flow out of you. Okay? Now, Jesus, Jesus makes reference to that verse in John. But before we get there, if you flip over to Exodus chapter 7. And this is where God is calling Moses out to go and appear before before Pharaoh. And it says in Exodus 7, and the Lord said to Moses, see, I have made you like God to Pharaoh, and your brother Aaron shall be your prophet. Now, what is Moses supposed to do in regards to Pharaoh? He's supposed to go and speak for whom?
For God.
For God. So he's saying to Moses, you are going to Pharaoh, to appear before Pharaoh to say, thus saith the Lord, and you will be as what to Pharaoh? You will be as God to Pharaoh. Okay? Now, when you flip over to John chapter 10, let's see. Where is that? John chapter 10, about halfway through the chapter. You've got where Jesus is making the statement, I and the Father am one, and making this claim that he is God. Then in verse 31 it says, the Jews picked up stones again to stone him. Jesus answered them, I have shown you many good works from the Father. For which of them are you going to stone me? The Jews answered him, it is not for a good work that we are going to stone you, but for a blasphemy, because you, being a man, make yourself God. And Jesus answered them, is it not written in your law, I said you are gods? Where did that come from? Psalm 82. If he called them gods to whom the word came, and scripture cannot be broken, do you say of him whom the Father consecrated and sent into the world, you are blaspheming because I said I am the Son of God? Okay, to whom is it that the word of God came in this context?
The prophets.
The prophets and the priests. Okay, so who's he talking to when they want to pick up the stones? And
Their leadership.
they're priests.
Yeah.
They're leaders. Okay, so he's basically saying you're okay with God calling you God, but you're not okay with God calling me God. Okay, but notice that Jesus is the one that's giving the commentary to explain Psalm 82. So in Psalm 82, it's just not a blanket, people are God, but he is speaking to a particular group, not even just the Jews, but to the prophets and the priests. And he's saying that you are gods in the same way that Moses was a god to Pharaoh. Okay, those that are supposed to be representing God are, see what he's getting at there. So there's no claim where, because we're created in the image of God, that we are God's big G or little g. So I can say whatever I want to. Creation says I don't care. Okay, but I do share a likeness with God. Make sense? That's kind of the whole thing. Now, another thought about it is that, and I think this will be good because we're going to hit this again in 3 chapters. In Genesis, after God creates Adam and Eve and puts them in the garden, he says you can eat of all the fruit except for the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and then in that day you will die. Okay, and so they, just like a park bench that's got a sign on it, don't touch wet paint. What have I always got to do? I got to touch it. I'm doing this this big cabinet for Kim, and it's a Christmas present.
Next Christmas.
Maybe by next Christmas it'll be done. No, it's going to be done this week. And I sprayed the paint on it yesterday, and I'm looking at this one spot, and the paint was a different color. And what did I have to do? I figured out as soon as I touched it why it was a different color. Because that little spot on the paint, and it had not dried yet, so then I had paint all over my fingers. But so they eat of that fruit, and what happens to them?
They do die.
they do die eventually, but not only, but they die spiritually because what's happened to them?
They've been separated from God.
They're separated from God. Why? They sinned. Okay? Now, you ever see the cartoons where the guy wants to be good, but there's something's going on, the little angels on one shoulder and the little devils on the other shoulder, and they're like, do it, don't do it, do it, do it, don't do it. Okay? How many natures do we have?
One for each shoulder, anyway.
Well, according to the cartoon.
We have one sinful nature.
Hmm?
One sinful nature.
We have, okay, let's leave off the sinful right now. How many natures do we have? One, and what kind of nature is it?
Simple.
Well, leave off the sinful.
Godly.
Huh?
Godly then.
No, because we're not created in the image of God.
Human.
We have a human nature. What kind of nature did Adam and Eve have before the fall?
A godly nature.
Before the fall.
A human nature. They had a human nature. How many natures did they have? One, and it was a human nature that was not affected by what? Sin. Okay? It was pure. Okay? How many natures do we have? Leave the room.
So before the fall, it was human, but it was a pure.
It was, but
After
yeah,
the
it was.
fall, now it's a sinful.
It's but it's still a what?
Human.
It's still a human
It's still
nature.
human,
And honestly, I don't like the term sinful nature or sinful human nature. I like the term, this is what one of my professor at Southeastern said, we have a sin-tainted human nature. Okay? But it's still one nature. Now, how many natures did Jesus have?
Well, two.
Two.
Speak up, let Ron say. I told you it was
Sounds
two.
like
Jesus has a human nature, an untainted human nature, and a divine nature. But we have one nature, and after the fall, it is a sin-tainted nature, but it's still the one nature. You know, so this idea of the little angel and the little devil arguing inside ourselves, that's not theologically correct. We have one nature. Now, but it is a sin-tainted nature. Okay. Now, the question is, okay, we know why Adam has a sin-tainted nature. Why? Because he sinned. Okay? Before he sinned, did he have a sin-tainted nature? No. Okay? When did we get a sin-tainted nature?
when we were born.
Or even
With Adam.
with Adam? Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay. with Adam.
Time, Ed.
Okay.
That's all he's got.
I want you to flip over to Romans chapter 5.
I knew it was gonna.
He said you knew you were going there.
This is a aha verse.
Which one?
Romans chapter 5, verse, which verse? You said you knew which chapter I was going to,
No, I
which
don't
verse?
remember the I remember the verse.
It's verse 12. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Therefore, just as sin came into the world through one man, which man was that? Adam. Okay. Just as sin came into the world through one man, and death through sin, and so death spread to all men because what?
All sinned.
All sinned. Okay?
Past tense. Past tense.
Past tense. But who is the all?
Everybody.
All.
Everybody. Okay? So, this is interesting. Paul says that sin entered into the whole world through Adam, and death reigned in the whole world through Adam, because everybody sinned with whom? Adam. So, when did I first sin?
When Adam sinned.
When Adam sinned. What does that mean?
Born with.
Okay, I'm born with it.
Can't escape it.
Can't escape it.
Tainted human.
But it literally, understand what it literally says here, and this is important. Words are important. And what we believe is it's the words that are inspired. And what this verse says, it doesn't say that I would have sinned with Adam if I had been there. Or it doesn't say that Adam was a representation for all of mankind. And because Adam sinned, then God said, well, everybody's a sinner. It says that everybody sinned when Adam sinned. Somehow or another, I participated in that sin, is what that verse says.
I always think of it as if you take a bucket of clear water and you put a drop of dye in it, that dye spreads out through the whole bucket. You can never get that dye out again.
You can't. But it goes beyond that, because it literally says, Ed Davis did it.
At least helped do it.
I participated in it, and I cannot explain that. But I can give you another example of it. Which verse am I going to go to now?
14?
No. I'm going to go to Hebrews.
Okay, Hebrews.
Hebrews, chapter 7. Yep. Which verse? Hebrews chapter 7.
25.
Okay. Anybody hear the guy by the name of Melchizedek? Who is Melchizedek?
He was a priest.
He's a priest of the Most High God.
Jerusalem.
Appears in the book of Genesis to Abraham. Abraham goes and does battle. I think he rescues Lot, comes back, and he's won all these things. And then Melchizedek shows up, and what does Abraham do?
Give some tribute.
Gives him tribute, pays tithes to him. Okay, now, in the book of Hebrews, it says that Jesus is a priesthood under the order of Melchizedek. And what's significant about Melchizedek?
No beginning.
He has no beginning and no end. It's an eternal priesthood.
No genealogy.
No genealogy. Okay, and whether or not that's literal or not, we don't know, but at least from a literal standpoint, there's no genealogy, and so it's saying something, and it's saying the eternality of it. But notice what it says in verse 9. One might even say that Levi, who is Levi?
First priest.
He was the priest, the Levitical priesthood. One might even say that Levi himself, who receives tithes, paid tithes through Abraham. For he was still in the loins of his ancestor when Melchizedek met him. Okay? So, the writer of Hebrews, and I think it's Paul, says that Levi paid tithes to Melchizedek when Abraham paid tithes to Melchizedek. Okay? And we know that Abraham predated Levi by multiple generations. Okay? So we have here an example of what Paul is saying when Paul says that we all sinned when Adam sinned. Okay? So because of that, it's not a lineage of a passing down through the blood. Okay? Some people talk about how the blood's tainted, and it's through the blood. We're a bloodline all the way from Abraham, and the blood's tainted. I don't have to go there because who sinned with Adam? All of us sinned. It's not that we inherited it. There's a sense in which we inherited it, but we all actively did it. Okay? We all actively did it. So, and we're going to hit that again in a couple weeks. So let that settle on you, and at least spend one sleepless night over it, so that I can feel I'm not the only one.
I don't know if I can wait that long.
But with that, what we got to understand is that although we are sin tainted, even after the fall, are we created in the image of God? We are still created in the image of God. And we're going to hit this verse again. I don't want you to turn in there yet. But Genesis chapter.
Can you tell me what image means?
Character, reflection.
The reason I say that, people talk about, I'm going to create this, have an image. So is the image going to be physical, but we are actually spiritual, correct, rather than flesh and blood, as a person, as a creation?
As a whole person, physical and spiritual, it all incorporates into the image of God. Now, that does not say that God has a physical body, but in my presentation of the image of God, a physical body is part of it.
God looks sort of like us if he was physical, because of Jesus looked sort of like us, or looked like us?
Sort of. As God created a physical universe,
Yeah.
and he put us in this physical universe to show forth his glory as his image bearer, okay? And as that, part of that is having a physical body. And that's about as far as I can go on that.
But his
But here's what I don't want to say, because this will, if I say that we just bear his image in a spiritual sense, and the physical has nothing to do with it, then I'm dividing up my body. I'm dividing up who I am. And in my totality, I'm created in his image, which includes my physical body. And if you go too far down the idea that I'm only bearing his image on a spiritual sense, then I can separate the body and I can go into an area of Gnosticism where anything that's physical is bad and it's only the spiritual that's good. And that's not what's happening here. It's the physical and the spiritual, emotional, all of that. Everything that's entailed in you being a human being is the image of God. All of them. But it's not saying that God necessarily has a physical body. But in order for us to show forth his image in a physical world, we have to have a physical body.
And so our image in God is our spiritual nature.
It's our total nature. Yes, you start chasing your tail.
Unless,
Hmm?
God has a tail?
you read,
What?
Genesis 5, and that's what you referring to, that's coming up later?
9.
Okay. Can we look at, Genesis 5?
Mm-hmm.
He said, "This is the book of the generations of Adam. In the day that God created man, he made him in his likeness, in the likeness of God. He created him male and female. He blessed them and named them man in the day that they were created." And then the next verse, he said, "When Adam lived 130 years, he became father of a son in his own likeness." That's his with a small a.
Mhm.
Talking about Adam, according to his image, which is Adam,
Okay,
and named him Seth. Both of those referring not to God, but to Adam.
right.
So this was after they were put out of the garden. And Adam had a son, and he had Adam's image. He didn't have God's image.
Okay, then turn over to Genesis chapter 9. We're gonna have to go there then.
Okay?
Genesis chapter 9, which is definitely after the fall. And this is speaking to Noah, which is one of the descendants of Adam. And it says in verse 6, "Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed, for God made him in what? His own image." Okay?
In,
Yeah, he made him in God's image, that's
Yeah,
right.
God made him in his own
But
image.
that was before.
No, that's after. He's talking about
He was
capital
talking after,
punishment.
but he was talking about before.
But he's not talking about that, he's talking about them now. If somebody takes the blood, sheds the blood of a man now, because that man now is created what? In God's image. He's not talking about something in the past, he's talking about now.
He said, "For the image of God, God made him, past him."
Yeah, because we're made.
He made
He
Adam.
made me,
He made Adam that did not have a sin.
but he made me,
When he did have sin,
but he made me. And he made David. David, Hebrews, Psalm 139. What does Psalm 139 say?
that says a lot of stuff about another subject as well.
We got Proverbs, the right book. That would be a good place. Yeah. "For your eyes saw my unformed substance in your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there wasn't." Let's back up a little bit further. 13. "For you formed me," who's the you? God. "You formed me you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb." We are each individually what? Made by whom? God. Okay? So God is making each one of us. Yes, me and Kim had a part, very active part in making our children, but who made Caitlin and Ashley? God did. And he made them in whose image? His own. And when you come back here to verse 9, this is not talking about Adam, he's talking about every individual, because if it was only Adam, then there would only be capital punishment borne out to anybody that kills whom? Adam. But capital punishment carries on because every single person is what? created in the image of God. And that's what he's saying here. This is not just a don't kill Adam, but he's like, every person is created in God's image. Okay?
But going back to Hebrews, you know, we are all in Adam's loins,
Right.
and Adam sinned,
Yeah. And we sin.
and we sinned. That's why Jesus had to come through Mary, because he had to have a
Well,
body incarnated without sin
Right.
or sin nature.
Because it's not through the blood. I mean, that's why Jesus is born the way he is. Because you have to get out of that line. Jesus was not in Adam's loins. He did not participate in that sin. He came
Well, I think
another way.
what we need to be thinking about also is that once we're saved, Paul talks a lot about being transformed to the image. Now,
Yeah.
if we had the image, why would we have to be transformed to? the
Because
image?
it's a process. It's a process of cleaning up, and that's part of that whole process. Here's the reality. If we are not created in his image, can we have a relationship with God?
Only after we're saved, yes. We're
But
recreated.
what about the people in the Old Testament? What about Adam after he falls?
It was all
Does
about
he-
faith.
Right, but it's still, how many people can have an image, a relationship with God on this earth? How many people can?
The ones that he came upon is one.
Everybody can. Now, it has to come through faith in Jesus Christ, but everybody has the potential of that because we are all what?
Created in
We're all created in his image. And and that's the only reason why we're redeemable. That's the only and if you go on, I don't want to belabor this because I want to get to the other aspect of this, but Genesis chapter 9 verse 6 is very clear. We are all created in his image, even after the fall. And if you get into reform, this is 2 Corinthians 3:18 and then Colossians 3:10. It all talks about that reformation or that reforming being molded into his image, which is, and what do we call that as Christians? Starts with an S. Sanctification. That sanctification process. That even in that, so when we put our faith in Jesus Christ, if you want to go down that road, if you put your faith in Jesus Christ, how much of God's image do you bear
0.
when you put your faith in Jesus?
At that time, you don't. When he comes into you, he brings his image and puts it in you at that point.
Okay, but how much?
Enough it needs to be transformed.
Okay, now here's the deal. Either we are created in his image, either we bear his image or we don't bear his image. It can't be a little bit or a process. But what he's talking about there is not this creation thing, but he is talking about how we are being molded and shaped and grown because we are fallen. We are broken. But when
We're quickened into his image and to grow in his image. We're fallen. When we're saved, that point on is creating or transforming into his image.
But are we still fallen?
No, not if we're saved. We're his child.
We're his child, but are we fallen?
Yes.
We are still fallen. We still have a sin-tainted nature as a human being.
Because they still do
Be-
what's wrong.
Because I still do what's wrong. Even as a believer, Paul talks about that.
But all the stuff goes on the cross when
Yeah, it was all
When we're
paid for
saved.
on the cross.
anything we sin after, we have somebody to be with us to tell us, hey, we've done wrong, and we can confess our sins, be
But it's
justified.
not salvific. It's salvific when we put our faith in Jesus Christ. When we're forgiven for sins afterwards, we're not constantly getting resaved.
Paul says, I die daily, so
We die to ourselves daily. That's a thing that he intentionally, volitionally does. But what in Paul's dying to himself daily, what does Paul also do daily? He picks up his cross, but he also fails daily. We all fail daily, but that, the reality is we are created in his image. I was created in his image. I could not come to him. I could not have a relationship with Jesus Christ if I wasn't created in his image. And that's why he redeems me and doesn't redeem my dogs, although that many times my dogs have a lot better character than I do. And that's the reason we can have a relationship with him now. And it's very clear to me, and it's clear.
It's what you're saying, it sounds like when Adam sinned, he lost the image of God. Because if he had the image of God, and we don't, because we're sinners, then he would have lost that image.
where does his image come from?
Well, it came from God, he was created in the image of God, and we're created in the image of God.
Would it have come from the tree of life, or would it have come from the tree of knowledge and good and evil?
Neither one.
Neither one.
say that at all.
It came from God.
Paul was very clear on
You don't believe that the tree of life was God?
It doesn't matter.
It does matter.
It doesn't matter because even before that, God, even separate from the tree of life, God created man in his image. It had nothing to do with coming to a tree. We don't even know if they ever ate from the tree of life. In fact, I would say that they had not, because when they were cast out of the garden, Adam and God put an angel to keep them from going back into the garden, to keep them from doing what? Eating from the tree of life. So the implication there is they never were interested in eating from the tree of life, but they did want the other. But they were created separately from that in the image of God. And when they fall, they're still created in his image, but now it's a sin-tainted image. And that's the whole reason Jesus came. We're just gonna have to agree to disagree on this and move on.
I agree.
But I'll tell you, the lion's share, in fact, I cannot find any theological argument that would argue for anything other than the fact that we're all created in the image of God. And it is very important that we're all created in the image of God. Now, here's what I want you to see. Very important in this. It says, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created whom? Him. That's individual. Okay? So, you get on the right place here. So God creates us individually in what? In his image. And then it goes from there and says that he created them male and female. Okay? So I'm created in the image of God. Kim's created in the image of God. And together it says that he created God created a man in his image, society. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. Okay? So we've already looked at the passage in 139, how God creates us individually into his image. But he also creates the relationship, the man and the woman in his image. Okay? Has anybody ever been here long enough to remember a name LeMoyne Sharp?
Can't tell you what he did, but I know the name sounds
I remember.
familiar.
We're going back when dinosaurs were on the earth. I love LeMoyne. He was a professor, or he wasn't a professor, he was a teacher over at Luther Rice. He was on staff here. There were some classes that only Lemoyne Sharp taught at Luther Rice, so you could not graduate without taking the book of Acts. And there was another book that you had to take under him in order to graduate. So I took 2 classes under him. And I had a love-hate relationship with Lemoyne. Did you know that Lemoyne Sharp, did y'all know him or just know the name?
Just know the name. What was his position here?
I don't know what, he was on staff, but I don't know what his position
I'll have to
was.
look in the old directory.
Yeah. Gotta love him. Lemoyne Sharp did not believe that there were any women in heaven.
It's something like that guy, who was the guy that just passed away recently?
Was he married?
Huh?
Where did we go?
Okay,
Floating around.
here's the great, no, here's the, okay, now, and he argued, and up until recently, I agreed with him on this, that and part of his argument was everything that came out of heaven is male. God the Father, God the Son, all angels that come out of heaven are identified as male, they have male names. Actually, and I went along with that for a long time, and I remember that I used to be very annoying to Kim whenever we would go to a Christmas shop during Christmas time, and you have the angels, and how were all the angels depicted? They were all depicted as women, and I was like, that's wrong, that's theologically wrong. But there's actually a passage in Zechariah, Zechariah 5:9, that talks about women, and it seems like they're probably angels. So I kind of backed off on that. But Lemoyne Sharp, this is what he believed, that as a woman, when you died, you got a sex change. I'm not joking on this. Yeah, in class, in a lecture, that everyone, don't look at me like that's.
Never shared that.
Reverting back to.
Why in the world would I share that you were gonna get a sex change when you were in death?
He
just didn't want to know.
I didn't think you wanted to know that, I wouldn't want to know that. But, so I put in my notes here, Lemoyne Sharp's wrong on this, but we are created, male and female, what? In his image, okay?
He lived to be 90, I just found his obituary.
Oh, wow. See, he finally figured out he was wrong on that one. So his wife may have straightened him out before that. Here's the thing when you look at that. You have God created man. Well, who is man?
That'd be
Mankind.
both.
Mankind.
We are mankind. God created mankind in his own image. But he also created him. Who was that? Adam and me. He created us individually in his image, and he created them, male and female. Created us. You have mankind, individual, but then us, the usums. And when we start talking about us, we start talking about relationship. So mankind is created in his image. So as a species, we are created, the species is created in the image of God. The whole species, humankind, is created in the image of God and bears forth his glory and his character in the world. But also individuals. Individually, I'm created in the image of God, and therefore I do what? I bear his image, I show forth his glory, but then also, what's the fundamental relationship between man and woman in marriage? So, relationally, we do what? Bear the image of God. And fundamentally, what is the Trinity? It's a what? It's a relationship. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit interact with each other relationally. And our interaction between peoples relationally should show forth what? Or it does show forth what? The image of God. Because we're sin tainted and we're fallen, it's a broken image, but it's still to show forth his image individually, as a species, and relationally. everything that is involved in being a human being is tied up in the image of God. Okay, now, I'm gonna just ask you a couple things. Because everyone's created in his image, what does that mean about how we should interact with each other?
Lovingly.
Lovingly? Just gonna leave it right there. Okay.
Respectfully.
Respect, everyone deserves respect.
God says to honor him.
We're to honor each other, because when we honor each other, who are we ultimately honoring, even if we don't understand it? God. Okay? We're to value. Does God have value? God has the greatest value. And because we are created in the image of God, we have value, and we should what towards each other? Value each other. Do we have purpose? Yes. Why? We're in the image, we're created in the image of God. God does everything with purpose. Now, think about this. What is this? When do we acquire that image of God?
When we were created.
When we were created. Okay. What does it say about abortion? We're killing the image of God. We're destroying the image of God. Okay, we can talk about how a potential life and all, and you know, you don't know what that baby is going to turn into. You know, what if, you know, I've heard the story about, you know, Beethoven, that, you know, mother had syphilis and was raped and all this kind of stuff. But just think if she had chosen to abort Beethoven, how we would have, you know, been deprived of everything. You don't know what potential that baby has, you know. Okay, you can take that breaks down. But if every baby is created in the image of God, every baby has value and purpose and should be honored and cherished from when?
Conception.
From conception on. And that does not break down. Okay? In the same way, when we looked at the Genesis passage talking to Noah about capital punishment, why should the life of the one that takes the life of the other be forfeited? Because they did what? They destroyed the image of God. They desecrated the image of God. What about social order? I mean, we immediately, you know, when you meet somebody, what's the first thing you ask them?
What do you do?
What do you do for a living?
What do you do? What's that?
What do you think if they say I'm a brain surgeon?
Oh, you're
snorting well. Start telling them everything that's wrong with you.
I got this pain.
Yeah. What do you do if they say he's a ditch digger for Gwinnett County?
You kind of drop it down a little bit.
But
You
they're
place
both.
value on people.
We place value on people because of what they do.
We show partiality.
We show partiality, but what does the reality that they're both created in the image of
They're both the
God?
same in the eyes of God.
And if they're both the same in the eyes of God, what should that say that we
So
it should be the same? Should be the same. You know, is anybody created more in the image of God than somebody else? We're all equal. Yeah. Don't answer that question out loud. But we automatically say, oh, you know, so and so, you know. But we're all equal. But are some people's image more marred than others? Probable. Well, from a human standpoint, yes. From a divine standpoint, probably no. But we're all created in His image. Is there anyone that's less redeemable than somebody else?
It would have been better if he had not been born.
Yeah, but could if he repented? It's a good question.
Probably goes both ways.
He couldn't because God planned it the way he did it.
But he's a free agent. And if Judas had no choice,
If
then.
Peter could have been redeemed, if he was, so could have Judas. Judas
Had
chose
he
not,
lived.
Judas chose not to.
He
He
chose.
chose to go
He
hang
made choice,
himself.
yeah, he made a
Yeah,
choice.
he did make a choice. And, you know, I love what what one of my professors said. You know, if there was anybody beyond the reach of God, anybody unredeemable, why isn't there anything in the Bible that tells us how to minister to a person that's not redeemable? It's not there. Because every single person on some level is redeemable. And I am a wholehearted sovereignty of God person, but at the same time, every single person on the face of this earth that's ever been born, ever will be born, is redeemable. But not all are redeemed. Okay? This whole immigration thing that's going on, does the image of God have anything to say about that?
I mean, every single person on the face of the earth is created in the image of God, so that means regardless of your nationality, you still are in the image of God, and you still should hold the same respect and value for their lives as we do for our own.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean we can't enforce it.
No, it doesn't, no, it does not.
Like I said, do
I
it
just-
legally.
yeah.
You should treat them with
Do it-
respect
do
and
it
get it
legal-
out.
Do it legally.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll tell you, my viewpoint on immigration and stuff is, you know, and what's going on changed the first time I went to Honduras. Because the situations that I saw people in, if I was in the situation,
Oh, yeah.
I would do whatever
It took.
it took, legal or illegally, to get myself out and my family out of that situation. So my viewpoint on that changed, but we are still a nation of laws, okay? But think about it, y'all know who John Piper is? You know, John Piper gotten into a big stink, because he made reference to, it's Leviticus 19:34 in regards to this. It said, treat the stranger that is sojourning amongst you as yourself. What should we do as believers? As people? We should treat the sojourner amongst us as ourselves. As a church, and we have people from all nations coming to Gwinnett County. As a nation, as a church, what should our objective be?
Invite them on.
Reach them.
To reach them. To reach them. God is bringing the nations to our door, legally or illegally. Our job as a church is to reach them with the gospel. Now, at the same time, we are a nation of laws. And, and how both of those interact is above my pay grade. But the reality is that as followers of Christ and people that affirm that everyone is created in His image, those people that are here illegally for nefarious reasons or good reasons, they're still God's image bearer, and we are to treat them with respect and honor, and at least that means sharing the gospel. At least that means sharing the gospel. And because I don't need to step on even my toes, what does this say about the speed limit?
Because it's foolish.
That's a great suggestion.
Those are suggestions.
It needs to be updated.
Maybe they need to be updated, but why?
We also learned that in Honduras, that everything was a suggestion.
Everything's a suggestion, and I fear for my life all the time. Speed, yeah. Okay, one of the in the Levitical laws was that you had to build a parapet around your roof. What's a parapet? Fence. A fence. You build a wall or a fence around your roof. Why?
So that no one would fall off.
So no, because people went up on the roof to hang out because it's a little bit cooler, so no one would fall off. Why should I care that no one would fall off the roof?
Might be you.
We're made in the image of God. Made in the image of God.
Because we're made in the image of God, life is valuable and life is precious and should be protected. Therefore, if you're gonna be up on the roof and have people on your roof, you need to do what? Protect them by building a fence around it. See, this reaches into so many aspects of our life. And, and it's, when we're driving down the road and there's the old person, we're all there, doing 5 miles an hour in the fast lane. And I wanna
Run them over?
run them over. But what do I have to remember?
You're gonna be old one.
Yeah,
It is gonna be
They were made in the image of God.
But he's made in the image of God.
And God will punish him at the right time.
And God will punish him at the right time, and I hope I'm there to see it, But, I think it's very important for us to really wrestle with this reality. And let it color how we interact with each other. Maybe the way we treat the people around us is a reflection of the way we really think about God. Because, you look at the person next to you, it's an image bearer, it's God's image bearer. And, people should be precious to us, people should be valuable to us. Paul says that we should think of other peoples as being what? Greater and better than ourselves. That all comes out of what? This whole reality that we're all created in the image of God. Anything anybody wants to add? Good place to stop.